bakers, candlestick makers, right, are dying of disease. It's going to be devastating, okay? Devastating to your economy. Oh, check your current events today, right? So, the United States right now is talking about, what can we do? I mean, most of us are living paycheck to paycheck, and there are a lot of people right now without a paycheck, right? And some of you maybe, if you work in the restaurant or tourist industry, all over the place. It's going to be a ripple effect for a long time. So even long after this disease is under control, we're most likely going to have really tough economic consequences. I would say beyond a year. All right, we'll see. The government can make some actions, and we'll see what happens in November. But economic consequences can be really dire. It's going to lead in Rome to regional self-sufficiency. The Roman Empire is going to start to break apart. Okay, especially the Western half, the European half, is going to start to break apart. That's not going to happen in the West, don't worry. Okay? China after the Han. Okay, wow, what happened? The Han Empire fell in the year 220. There had been internal problems, without getting into too much detail. Factions within the government. Yeah, kind of like Republicans and Democrats fighting one another. No, there was not a democracy. There weren't political parties, but there were eunuchs, and there were the Confucian scholars, and were family members fighting within the palace. If you're the emperor, you're just trying to deal with what's happening in the palace, right? You're not really paying attention to the farmers whose rents are really high, and whose taxes are really high, and whose crops are really low. Okay, you can't feed your kids, and the tax collector comes along. What do you do? Well, I guess you kill him. And the rent collector comes along, kill him too, right? There is rebellion in the countryside. Wealthy had monopolized the land. Wealthy people had their own private armies, and the poor people rebelled. Right? Basically, when the Han rulers sent armies out, put down those rebellions. Gross oversimplification here, right? General A, B, and C put down the rebellion, but then set up kingdoms A, B, and C, right? So we have the period of three kingdoms. Yes, if you can see this here, the Wu, Wei, and Shu. That's actually a city, Chengdu. I have some friends in Chengdu. Hi, if anyone's watching. So it breaks into three pieces. Okay. Rome's going to break into more than three. Three, right? Depends on when, right? It breaks into two initially, Eastern and Western. So let's see what happens there with the Western Roman Empire is going to fall. Internal decay, right? Succession crises. Who is the emperor? I don't know. Keep changing emperors every 6 months, right? We have a period of about 26 years, and there are about 50 emperors. Only one of them escaped a violent death. Okay? So we call these the barracks emperors. Who's on the throne calling the shots? Well, who is it today, right? Because the emperor just got killed, and the guy who killed him becomes the next emperor. It's not a recipe for stability. Rome had become too large. The Pax Romana didn't hold. The disease caused economic breakdown. We get an emperor named Diocletian, 284 to 305. Okay? He decides to deal with economic problems, not by giving every person in Rome $1,000, as what's being debated right now in the U.S. Congress, but by telling bakers, you have to bake, 1,000 loaves of bread a day, and you can only charge 5 cents a loaf, right? Well, that just doesn't make sense, okay? If the flour costs more than that, the bakers can't do it, right? So he tries to freeze people into their jobs and freeze prices. It just doesn't work. Diocletian actually began to focus on the eastern half of the empire, okay? And after he was done, after he I can't remember how he succumbed. If he was killed or if he died of natural causes or maybe abdicated. The civil war followed his reign. So somewhat like the Roman Republic, which fell through civil war, the Roman Empire, now I'm getting confused, the Roman Empire is also going to fall through civil war. Here, actually, one of Diocletian's solutions was, we'll divide the empire into 4 pieces, and I'll share it. I will share it with 3 other guys, and, it'll be easier to rule 1/4 of the empire, and then, the whole thing, and I'll kind of have an assistant, and yeah, okay, one hand on the shoulder, buddy, but everyone has their second hand on their sword, right? So we know civil war is coming. Eventually, we get kind of a little bit of resurgence of stability under Constantine, but he moves the capital, he gets the heck out of Rome, right? He moves the capital of Rome from Rome over here, what had been a Greek fishing port called Byzantium. It's a new capital in the east. He also converts to Christianity after having a vision prior to a battle, which just seems to be a very unchristian thing to do. Before this battle, he looks in the sky and sees a cross, and the voice of Jesus, he says, told him, "By this cross you will conquer." Oh, really? By this cross you will kill people? Okay. Well, they win the battle the next day, and he decides to convert to Christianity eventually. Not right away, kind of waits till he's on his deathbed. Look, I don't know what was in his heart. Was it opportune to convert to Christianity? Did he really feel in his heart? I don't know. What I can say is the Roman Empire is governmentally very weak. The Catholic Church is becoming very strong. So the best and brightest young men are not joining the government. Why would you? It's falling apart. It's not going to pay much. Join the church, okay? Because it's young and vigorous. So some of the best and brightest are joining the church. And maybe, just maybe, Constantine wants to use the church as kind of a crutch for the empire itself. Okay? Population decline continued. Barbarization of the army. What does this mean? Well, when your soldiers are dying of battle and or disease, how do you replace them? The Romans began to employ people from outside of Rome to form the ranks of the Roman legions. Okay? So you, as a Germanic person, get a job in the Roman army, it's just for the paycheck, right? And you now have to guard Rome against your cousins. Maybe your loyalty is not really to Rome, okay? So this barbarianization or barbarization of the army and renewed civil wars. Okay? So Rome is in trouble as we move into the 3rd century, the 200s, and then here we are in the early 4th century. Germanic people are on the move. Outside people are on the move. So-called barbarians, although actually many of them were quite civilized and knew how to read and write. The Visigoths are on the borders. Actually, the Visigoths were Germanic people who said, "Can we come and live inside of Rome because we're afraid of the people on the outside who are chasing us?" And they were the Huns. Yes, Attila and his people. So you get this mess here. This is from your textbook, okay? I know it's probably a little difficult to see on YouTube, but this is a big mess. It's called the Völkerwanderungen, right? The Germanic, for the wandering of people. Well, yeah, here are the, I can't even see myself. Here are the Huns, that would make sense. The Huns are kind of like the cue ball in a big billiards game. They knock into these other Germanic peoples who kind of end up in the different pockets of Rome, okay? I can't read this key, I'm standing it. But I know it's the Angles and the Saxons who eventually hook up and end up in Britain. All right, the Visigoths, much later, the Franks. Let's hold on. The Ostrogoths, the Vandals are my favorites. Here come the Vandals with all kinds of hoodies and spray paint, right? Doing that. No, just kidding. Right? That's where we get the word vandalism. They apparently caused so much damage here in North Africa. The Lombards, they ended up in Italy. And then eventually the Franks, purple people, okay? From whom we get the name France. The Franks will actually become, sorry to the others, but the most important of these so-called barbarian tribes, because they will be the makers of the new Western Europe, okay? So here come the Huns and the Germanic people are kind of chased into the empire. The borders fall. Okay, so they're overrun, but it's only in the west. All this activity is really on the left side of my hand. When the Roman Empire falls, it's the brown section. The purple section goes on for another 1,000 years, kind of. Over that time, it shrinks to become just Constantinople by 1453, but it survives. Right? Roman tradition survived. Roman law survives in the east, which we will come to call the Byzantine Empire. Technically, it's Eastern Roman Empire, but let's call it Byzantine after 476, right? It's going to be, Greek-speaking and Roman in tradition, especially Roman law, survives. Cities, wealth, as such survives. Well, no wonder Constantine, he maybe saw this coming. The capital of the Byzantine Empire will be Constantinople. Okay? Constantine, back in the early 4th century, early 300s, moved the capital from Rome over to here. Maybe he kind of saw this coming, right? Because East was easier to defend, it was more urbane, it was more civilized and sophisticated. So the fall of the Western Roman Empire is overrun. The Ostrogoths actually sack the city of Rome in 476, and that's the date we give. We should just round it up to 500, man, right? To make it easier, but right around 500, Rome falls in the west. What had happened in the meantime? Well, Christianity had become the official religion. What? Yeah, in the Roman Empire, persecutions of Christians had stopped because in the year 380, well, Constantine had legalized it, number one, so persecution really stopped then around the year 312. In the year 380, the Emperor Theodosius made it the official religion of Rome. Now it's the official religion. So guess what? Non-Christians get persecuted, okay? So I guess we're feeding pagans to the lions now. Darn it, okay. Christianity had really acquired an intellectual tradition. Representative of that was looks like Augustine. Everyone says Augustine, it was actually Augustine. St. Augustine, who brought in a lot of Roman history and Greek philosophy into the Christian tradition. In the teachings of Jesus, look, it was rather simple faith, okay? Take God's love and share it in the world, okay? I mean, that's basically it, right? You can accept the love of God. You have free will to do that, but if you accept it, then you have a responsibility to share it with the least fortunate. Okay? It's not heavily intellectual. Okay? It might be emotionally fulfilling. Community in this world, salvation in the next. But Augustine and others really added this kind of intellectual heft. Okay? The church grew an organization, as we said before. It took on the Roman organizational chart. Dioceses, these are like big sections. Actually, the See is the biggest section, right? The Holy See is not a body of water, it's SE. That's where the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, sits. Dioceses were Roman sections of their empire. Then you get down to the kind of the parish level, at the local level, like counties. Missionary activity, the church is very successful in converting so-called barbarian people to Christianity, in this case Catholicism. And they were pretty smart about it. Often what they would do is get the wife of a ruler, the wife of a Germanic king or chief, to convert, and then it was a little easier to get her husband. Once you got the ruler, right, the Germanic chieftain, you got all the people. There's like no choice, okay? If Clovis, for example, king of the Franks, chief of the Franks, convert to Catholicism, all of the people who are in my tribe have to convert to. No freedom of choice here when it comes to religion. Right? Catholicism also became standardized. I'm putting myself on the spot here. I shouldn't have to do this, but if you have attended church in the apostolic tradition, kind of mainline Christianity, you might be familiar with the Apostles' Creed, sometimes called the Nicene Creed. We believe in one God, Father Almighty, maker of heaven and earth, of all that is seen and unseen. All that rest of the thing. It becomes the mission statement. Sister Mary Elmo would not be happy with me right now, wherever she is. God bless her soul. Becomes the mission statement of the Catholic Church. Okay? And it's actually used by many other mainline Protestant churches. So they push out other beliefs. Jesus is eternally begotten. God from God, light from light, true God from true God, one in being with the Father, through him all things were made, right? So these beliefs are put out there. Jesus was not man on earth. Jesus was God. God and man at the same time, right? So Jesus was not created by the Father, God, and Jesus coexists with the Father. Okay? These are really complicated ideas that are added to Christianity, and historians say maybe not there in the beginning, but added to Christianity 4 centuries after the death of Jesus. Okay? So the Bishop of Rome becomes Pape, the father of the church, at least the secular head of the church. Jesus is the religious head of the church, but representative on earth is the Pope of Rome, the Bishop of Rome. Roman Christianity is the foundation for medieval Europe. So as Rome fell politically, what replaces that culturally is the church. You might live under the Ostrogoths or the Visigoths or the Franks or someone else, or maybe you're in Eastern Europe living under a Roman emperor, but Christianity comes to touch all the people. Okay, so there's this common discourse of Christianity, Catholicism, even if they're under different political systems. Just quickly, there are other beliefs competing with Christianity. We mentioned what? Mithraism previously. We also have Manichaeanism. In Babylon, there is a religion that tried to somehow fuse Christian and Buddhist ideas, also really Zoroastrian ideas. So Zoroastrianism, Christianity, Buddhism. When you get Manichaeanism, What this comes to mean essentially is a very dualistic faith. There's good, there's evil, pick a side, okay? There's no nuance, there's no gray areas, it's good or evil. So if you hear the word Manichaean today, that tends to mean not someone who follows the prophet Mani, but someone who is really rigid in their thinking, right? There's good, there's evil, it's my way or the highway. We all know those people, and they're kind of pains in the butt, right? The Sassanids suppressed this religion in Persia. The Romans, who saw this as a Persian religion, suppressed it in Rome. So it's not just Christianity that gets persecuted. Manichaeanism did as well. I'm going to look just quickly at a chart of population. So history does not repeat itself, folks. Don't get freaked out. But this is population. Due to civil war and epidemic disease in Rome, population is going from, these are bad bar charts, but 60 million to looks like 40 million over 4 centuries. So population actually goes down. In China as well, after the Han, this goes down, okay? Something we hope not to see during our current pandemic, and I'm not predicting that at all. Okay, we're going to get a handle on this, folks. Do what your health department tells you to do, and don't follow any conspiracy theories. What about China? After the fall of the Han in the year 220, China had broken again into 3 kingdoms. Nomads along the north had moved into northern China. The Yurkins and other people who actually engaged in a process called Sinicization. What does that mean? They became Chinese, okay, culturally Chinese. There's a decline of Confucianism. Confucianism, we remember what we talked about: polite society, a sophisticated society, relationships. Well, in an era of breakdown, it didn't seem to offer a lot of answers yet. Confucianism will change. We'll see that in the future chapter, where Confucianism maybe borrows some ideas from Buddhism so it could better compete with the Buddhist incursion. Buddhism spreading through China at this time. Taoism became more popular, but maybe not the original Taoism of Lao Tzu, which was kind of going with the flow, kind of philosophical, becomes more religious. Lao Tzu becomes a deity, becomes religion with a priesthood and churches and rituals. There's a real interest among Taoists in extending life, so you get these kind of herbal remedies that are meant to extend life. Eventually gunpowder among them, which didn't really work for extending life. Okay, so Buddhism spreads through China, especially it's popular as it breaks itself into different sects, S-E-C-T-S sects, where there's kind of a fundamentalist Buddhism where, like, if you call upon the Buddha, you're going to the Pure Land of the West, which is heaven, or there's more intellectual Buddhism. So Buddhism is going to branch out to meet the needs of Chinese people. Confucianism doesn't go away, right? Confucianism culturally will hold on for a long time, but Confucianism becomes more religious. We'll end up eventually with something called Neo-Confucianism, where Confucius, much to his surprise, I would imagine, becomes a god. Okay, so here's our lecture. There's the entire chapter, folks. I am going more quickly in the videos than I would in class because you can slow me down. Okay, you can rewind this as if once was not enough. You can watch this again and again. All right. So I will be, well, you'll see this because I posted it to Blackboard. We'll also put up another discussion board. Face-to-face students discuss my questions. Hybrid students, that means you guys who, never mind, you would have met with me a different time. You should be the presentation, the discussion leaders. Read the current event. It's when we have our third exam, we've had 2 already, the third exam is going to be all take home. Of course, I'm going to email you some essay questions and ask you to blend what you're getting out of these videos and the text with some current event stuff, right? So not to ask you to define Mahayana Buddhism, you can Google that, right? I don't want a Wikipedia answer. I'm going to ask you to maybe compare the spread of epidemic disease in China in the 5th century, in Rome in the 3rd century, with the COVID-19 epidemic or pandemic worldwide today. Tough to Google that answer, okay? So keep up with the current events as I post them. Certainly keep up with the reading. Watch the videos, okay? Take the quizzes as they're posted as well. And hang in there, folks. Okay, we're all in this together, so we need to have some solidarity. We'll get through this time of crisis. History shows us that there are periods of crisis. We can get through them if we act rationally. Okay? Buying all the toilet paper at Wegmans, probably not rational. Okay, so be rational. Wash your hands. Stay home. Okay, follow the mandates, if not the recommendations of our authorities. Right, and we'll see you next time. Right, thank you.